You've been doing good, Chris, man. I mean, you're consistent no matter where you cook at. And you had a GC. I couldn't. You and I cooked against each other last time over in.
Mhm.
Oh gosh, I forgot the name of that. I remember that little place we ate that CBA.
Blue
Blue
Ridge.
Ridge, Blue Ridge, yeah, Blue Ridge. I got Grant. You got Grant. I had reserved there.
Hmm.
So,
Yep.
but you do good in that area. You got a lot of cook-offs. You seem to have Dallas dialed in all around that area.
Yeah, I mean, it's and we don't ever change anything. We cook the same, middle of the road, nothing, nothing fancy, nothing non-offensive. And I was cooking near James Dotson and Cody Allenbar and all them, and we were all kind of trying each other's food, and they were like, "Man, your food's it's good. It's just non-offensive. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing that jumps out like that's going to offend me or anybody else. It's just good middle of the road barbecue."
Yep.
And that's I hear people talk about, oh, you need a little spice, you need a little sweet, you need, man, I don't really kind of play into that.
Right.
I mean, when you cook every weekend, I think both of you know this and can vouch for it. But when you cook every weekend, you can make those subtle tweaks.
Mm-hmm.
You know kind of when to bring something back and to add a little more of whatever it may be.
Right.
Um, but as far as like, man, getting into the whole like mental thing of, oh, it needs to have a little more kick on it in this area, I don't really buy it.
Yeah.
I mean, we cook our stuff all over the place, and I'm not saying we win everywhere because we don't, but we usually,
Hold your own.
we hold our own. We're in the mix,
Right.
so try not to
Well,
play
it's not
those
like you're going to
games.
say I'm going to cross I-35 on the 30 or something like that. I need to add more of this, or I need to. I'm going over here past Walmart on the north side. I need to add a little bit more pepper. I mean, you can't get in the head game of things, right? You just
Yeah.
got to
Mm-hmm.
stay with the same program, and then you know that they might not like it quite so sweet up there in this little town. You know that you've been 2, 3 times, gotten hammered, so maybe you just kind of drop it off. So I mean, I know what you're saying. It's definitely hard to get in the head game and try to stay with it.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, yeah, sure, you've got to know your texture, your tenderness, and all that kind of stuff. But man, this barbecue game is mental as well. You
Mm-hmm.
you start getting in your own head, you can really screw some stuff up pretty quick.
Yep.
And that's one thing I tell people, man. Just run your shit. Like
Mm-hmm.
don't start overthinking stuff
Keep it
and
the
see what
same.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep it
Yeah.
simple.
I'm running the same brisket recipe I've run since 2018. I ain't changing it. It's been too good to me.
Yeah.
And if there's something that needs to change, it's either going to be, do they want a little more salty? Are they looking for a little something else? It's just going to be right in there. Because I mean, if it's something that's been good for 6 years, and I mean, I had a lot of top calls in brisket last year. Nothing's changed. I mean, it ain't like all of a sudden after 6 years that thing just went away. I
Yeah.
don't see it that way. So I think you're right. And I'm glad you bring that up because that's one of the things I really wanted to talk, about tonight is kind of get into flavor profiles and this and that. And I think sometimes like it seems like ribs right now are really, really sweet ribs. It seems like everybody wants a really, really sweet rib right now where, year and a half, 2 years ago, man, that wasn't the case. They wanted more a savory, little sweet. And I haven't made that transition yet over to a sweeter rib, but I'm about to because I can see my ribs have consistently not been where I want them. And at the same time, I've run 3 different rib recipes at 3 different competitions because I'm always playing around with stuff. I mean, I've had something that's been pretty good. I did this a couple years ago with chicken, and man, I was like, man, I'm going to take the year off. I really want to get something nailed down with chicken where it's just super consistent because I think we were all probably a couple years ago. Chris probably not because he does good everywhere he goes. But chicken, it seemed like a couple years ago, it's always was like the least consistent meat that we had. It was just like all over the place, and I had a lot of people telling me that. And I was just bound and determined to try to come up with something that was just a really good chicken that just was just consistent. And man, I mean, I bombed out pretty much well the whole year, but I was learning a lot of techniques and I had a lot of things that was working really good. And I really found out some really cool things with chicken, but I could not make it work on that Weber or that M16. And I just finally said, you know what? I can't get the color. I can't get what I want this chicken to do. And I'm scrapping. I'm going back to my 22-inch WSM. That's all I've cooked on for 6, 7 years prior to that. So I took all the stuff on that and I transferred it over to the 22-inch Weber. And man, I mean, I had like a third place chicken. I mean, my highest call for the whole year. It was the last competition of the year. I got a grand champion. And I go to the next competition, I had another third. I go to the next competition, I have another third. And I was like, gosh, dog it, I mean, it just sometimes you have to take that time to, if you really want to work on one meat and work on it till you get something. So I run a different recipe at Blanchard. I had a 10th place rib. I went to Bow Bridge. I ran a different recipe. I had a 10th place rib. I wasn't too upset with that because I was only 3 points from first. So it was really, really close from first to 10th was separated by 3 points. So, man, that can go either way. I mean, one judge gave me like a 7, well, man, if that was an 8 and this one's an 8, I was 4th place. 2 points would have put me, I think, 4th. So I was like, man, that was a good rib. And it was a little sweeter rib. Then I went back over here and I was like, well, man, I had a good rib call there last year. I'm just running that rib. Yeah. Man, it didn't even get a final table. But I think, once again, everything was smokier. I tried my rib. It was smokier today, too. So I think it was just too much smoke. And, smoke is an ingredient. And it's just like if you get too much salt, you get too much pepper, get too much heat, you can get too much smoke and you can run a good piece of meat. So, man, I don't know. That's just kind of what I'm playing around with and what I'm seeing ribs. I'm just like, man, I really want to try something with ribs this year. So do you ever get to that point, or are you kind of running your same stuff that you've been running for years? Or have you kind of shifted a little bit of flavor profiles, maybe with rubs and sauces and stuff?
Yeah, I have. And it's funny you bring that up, talking about ribs being a little bit sweeter profile right now. And before obviously getting ready for Houston, right? Kind of switching gears there, thinking about that contest. But I was like, man, I need to run some stuff here in Irving just to feel comfortable before we go, whatever. And I started looking back through some of our finishes. I mean, we've been cooking, fairly steady. So I was looking, our ribs more savory than sweet, I'd say. And it does good usually all the time. And I started going back, looking at all my notes and all my placings. I was like, man, I need to do something, right? Like, we were still kind of hanging around that top 10, but we weren't getting the calls that I think we deserved. Like, texture, tenderness, man, we were nailing it. Everything was good there. And I'm like, shit. And I've been noticing, okay, I know that guy's profile is a little bit sweeter. So going into Irving, I was like, all right, I'm gonna make a decision to sweeten my rib up a little bit. Take a little bit of the savory out, add a little sweet, and it worked.
Yep.
It's not going to work like that every time, but it did.
So, yeah. And
I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, and that's kind of where my ribs just kind of been that 6th place, 5th place, 6th place. Like, come on. And then all of a sudden you get a first, and I was like, all right, man, I got a first out of this thing. And then, I go to another competition, I got a first, or I think I had a second. And I was like, oh man, maybe we're on to something. Then next thing you know, no final table. It's just like, dang, man, right when and this was last year. And it was more that savory, savory rib, not over sweet, just real balanced, right? And that's what I wanted to work on. I was like, man, I'm not tired of it being middle pack, but man, I'm just trying to get everything moved a little bit higher. I mean, middle pack's good, but if you're going to beat Chris, if you're going to beat Aaron, if you're going to beat some of these guys, man, it's going to get pretty tough. Sometimes you need 3 good calls, 2 good top 5s at least, and better not be too far out of a top 5 with the other ones. So it's just getting a lot harder. I mean, there's a lot of good cooks out there.
Yeah, that's what I was sitting next to Justin West at awards before they started, and even Justin made the comment. He's like, "Man, 2 top 5s will win this." I mean, 2/5 might win it,
right? Just
because of the caliber of cooks that were there. I mean, there were 30 cooks.
Yeah,
man,
30 cooks.
Any of those 30 cooks could have GC'd.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely,
man, you never know, but yeah, I think having two in the top 5 definitely helps.
Yeah. You just about have to get it, especially when you have some good cooks. If you can get 2 in the top 5 with that kind of caliber of cooks, you pretty much well kind of setting yourself up for success at that point. So I'm sure after you had 2 first place, you was probably feeling pretty good. So I was already like, my damn chair's going down. I had already done called it. I told Suzette, I was like, yeah, Chris is going to win this thing. I was like, I don't see his brisket being out of the money anywhere. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, it is funny.